Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Facebook Live session. My name is Dr. Wayne Fillion, and I'm the Senior Manager of Rugby Safety at the South African Rugby Union. I'm joined here with my esteemed co-panel over here, Sia Kolisi, a Springbok rugby player and Vice-Captain, Mr. Clint Reedhead on that side, who is the Senior Manager Medical at South African Rugby. He also was the physio at the World Cup winning 2007 Springbok team. And then we have our panel referee over there, international referee, Rasta Rasivenge. Also had 5 tests, 10 Super Rugby caps as a referee, and he's the most experienced sevens referee in the world with 243 sevens matches. He's also been in charge of the Olympic and World Cup finals in the sevens event. Just to start off some discussion, I think the first part is to start with Rasta over there in the side. Just to give us some insight on the new applications of the tackle laws around dangerous tackles and how this has impacted the game from a referee's perspective. Rasta, over to you.
So World Rugby has come out with a new directive that we need to concentrate on reckless tackles and accidental tackles for player safety. It's a new emphasis so that we cut down on catastrophic injuries and to help player welfare.
And Rasta, just out of interest, what are these two laws and how do you apply them as referees?
So when we're looking at reckless tackles, we're looking at the actions of the tacklers. We grade the tackles whether it's low entry tackles or high entry tackles. We look at the intention and the actions of the players, and it's important to have a clear directive in terms of how players should tackle and how we should deal with them as referees to cut down injuries.
And out of interest, how do you differentiate between an accidental dangerous tackle and a reckless dangerous tackle?
When we look at reckless tackles, we look at the players' actions, whether they are intentionally going above the head, neck area. And accidental tackles normally happen when players slip into tackles or step into a tackle, and the defenders are caught unawares and they accidentally tackle high.
Okay. Now, in terms of sanctions, can I ask Sia, maybe from your side, as a player involved at the highest level of the game, now, how do you feel these tackle laws have changed your behaviour as the player on the field having to tackle?
Obviously, it's changed the behaviour quite a lot because we've had to think about what we do before we tackle, and obviously we prepare as well for it on the field. You know, they tell you at training already you have to tackle low. Because obviously we don't want to lose a player on the field, and it's good for us. And we've had to, when you're carrying the ball, you feel safe. You run as hard as you can. You have no worries because you know you've got protection under you. And, you know, so it's so far it's been going well, and I think it's good for the players. And it's giving us an opportunity to play continuity because there's not a lot of stoppage, and all the players are making the proper tackles. A lot of line breaks because guys are thinking, no, I shouldn't tackle that high and everything. So far it's going well, I think.
Okay, so from your player perspective, do you spend more time preparing safe tackle techniques to try and get out of bad habits?
Yeah, we did at the beginning, but it kind of becomes natural. You know what I mean? It comes natural, but you know mistakes happen. Always like Rasta says, you might come in for a high tackle and a hard tackle, and a guy steps you, and then you swing your arm by mistake and you hit him. Which is something that the refs are very good with that. They can see your intention, especially if you hit a player by mistake. They always check on how if you finish him. So your intentions of you, if you hit a player on the neck and you just pull out immediately, that's what you're actually supposed to do. Where some guys would hit the neck and then they would actually finish the tackle on the floor, which is not what you're supposed to do.
Okay, fantastic. Now, just on that, I'm going to come back to Rasta for a second. I think one of the big arguments over here is around this. It's surely there are too many penalties, red cards, yellow cards, and they're allegedly not good for the game because people want to play and see 15 on 15. Now, from a player safety perspective, there's a counter argument to that. Rasta, from a referee's perspective, what is your feeling on that matter?
So when we look at tackles, obviously there are mitigating factors. We look at force and speed as well in terms of the tackler. So the great thing about it, in terms of my perspective, because I've been involved in the sevens game where we had a large application in terms of sanctioning dangerous tackles and neck rolls, we've seen the reduction in players tackling high and neck rolling, or if you call it crocodile, tackling players at the breakdown. So as a result, we've had a higher score frequency in the sevens game, and players now are aware that they should not commit to dangerous tackles, and they're more cautious in terms of how they enter the breakdowns and how they remove the threats that are at a breakdown. When I refer to threats, I'm referring to arriving players on their feet in a strong position. And normally this happens when attacking players, if they can't remove the threat, they go to the weakest point, which is the head-neck area, and remove them. We're seeing more and more players becoming more cautious around that area. Even in malls, players are not removing players out the mall around the head-neck area. So the speed and the force is very important for us to determine whether it's reckless or whether it's accidental.
Wait, can I just come in there and say something? So first of all, I'm very excited by what Sia said, that they spend time at practice coaching and talking about the tackle law and the safer tackle techniques. And also what Rasta said, that they are starting to notice that there is less of an emphasis of tackling around the head. I'd just like to point out that the tackle causes the most injuries in this game, and high tackles tend to lead to more head injuries than tackles below the shoulder. So the introduction of the emphasis on the law regarding anything above the shoulder is penalised, and that penalty, whether the ref must make a decision whether it's accidental or reckless, I think is a really great introduction to the rugby environment. Thanks, Wayne.
No, fantastic. I think one of the issues around we talk about is head, neck and spine injuries, and obviously the biggest risk in the game to a player is either a catastrophic head, neck or spine injury, and one of the biggest things nowadays in discussion is around concussions. Now, the research has shown us, and Clint, you probably agree on that side of things, is that the majority of head clashes, head-to-head collisions, head-to-shoulder collisions with concussions has been driven around the upright body position in contact. And in the old days, guys used to teach people to go and wrap the ball up upright, try and stop the ball from being played. But the truth is, how many turnovers result of wrapping up the ball? Not many. No, so I think from a safety point of view, I think a lot of these law changes have pushed people to go lower down and remove head-to-head collisions, which lead to a lot of concussions, probably more than 70% of the concussions, and then head-to-shoulder collisions as well. Clint, are you in agreement with that? And is that one of the positives?
Wayne, I'm in full agreement with that. Just to elaborate on some of those numbers that you spoke about, a bit of research done by World Rugby where they looked at the head injury assessment documentation. They showed that 72% of concussions or suspected concussions occurred in the tackle. 78% of those tackles resulted in head-to-head clashes. So as Wayne quite correctly pointed out, if we are forcing the player to tackle below the shoulder, that's a good thing. We take the head out of play, but we also then forcing the player to go lower, and what that means is that the player's potential head-to-head clash is removed from the equation. So one, tackling lower has a positive effect, and then I'm sure, as Dr. Wayne Fulun will elaborate just now with regards to what the BokSmart Rugby Safeties program is doing with regarding upskilling coaches on correct tackle technique, we'll show that tackling lower, that is between the nipple line and above the hip, if we hit that target zone and we use the correct techniques that Dr. Fulun, I'm sure, will elaborate on later, we will reduce the risk of these head-to-head contacts and obviously reduce the risk of concussion or serious head and neck injuries in the game.
Okay. Rasta, just coming back to you in a bit, what tips would you give referees in terms of managing dangerous tackles? I mean, one study that we're busy writing up with Dr. James Brown and some of our colleagues from Stellenbosch and University of Cape Town has shown at some of our youth peak data that of the illegal tackles, referees are still missing about 59% of them and not sanctioning them. Now, granted, it's only 1% of all tackles that happen. So in general, the bigger picture, they're getting more right than wrong. But it still leaves quite a high proportion of illegal tackles unanswered for and not sanctioned necessarily. Do you feel that there's something that needs to be done from a referee's perspective to sharpen that up and make referees better at getting those decisions right and making the call rather than looking at the game and saying, I'm judging that wasn't the intention and let it go? Do you have any views on that matter?
Yeah, so from a referee's perspective, it's very important that we need to start sanctioning all dangerous tackles instead of using empathy within the game. The more black and white we go, the more we reduce these type of tackles, and players would adjust. It's all about player behaviour. The more we change player behaviour by dealing with these sanctions as referees, the better it becomes. So, from our perspective, we're going to be working hard in terms of youth weeks, using more technology and upskilling referees to get key triggers or indicators in order to spot these dangerous tackles. And that's very important. So we'll be working hard on triggers and getting into better positions to identify the perpetrators.
So yeah, from your side, as a player, how do you, what tips would you give players, from a perspective of tackling in the field when you're in the heat of a battle on a match day to keep themselves safer?
To be quite honest, that's pretty hard because obviously you wanna get stuck in. You don't, especially in those precious time when they buy a 22 and let's say it's the last couple of minutes and they really have to score, so you don't really think. But I just think what makes it easier, you must just look where you're tackling. You must find a spot. That's exactly how they teach you training. Find a spot where you know you must hit and aim for it and hit it hard as you can instead of just throwing yourself in. And it's good for your team as well because then you don't get taken off in the last couple of minutes where you need to defend the try line. And just listen to it because the refs always tell us like you've had too many high tackles, like slow down or. And the captain also speaks. I think we just need to remind each other on the field as well, as we do a training that we must hit low, because we don't want to get anyone injured, and that could also happen to us. You could go high and then someone could get like Dimitri went to go tackle a guy. He got a neck injury where they hit him. He stopped breathing for a couple of seconds. Things like that happen. But if it's a mistake, there's nothing you can do about it, and the refs can't see everything the whole time. There's so many tackles on the field. You can't expect them to see everything. It's the same as us. When we prepare for a team, we prepare on what we see on the field, and whatever they bring us differently, there's nothing we can do. And there's only one ref and two touch judges. Not going to look the whole time. And the team also looking at other things, So we just need to be safe as players, look after one another, and try and make rugby as clean as possible.
And take responsibility for what you do.
100%.
Clint, I'm going to come to you back in a second. Just one thing that we've noticed a lot in our research on rugby is a couple of basic elements, and one of these, and we see it even in top flight rugby, is players getting it wrong, getting their head on the wrong side of the tackle, getting in front of a guy running onto him, or leading with the head into contact. And the majority of concussive episodes come from getting your head in the wrong position in the wrong place. Majority of our catastrophic injuries in the tackle are exactly the same events. Leading with the head into contact, getting in front instead of on the side of the ball carrier running onto you. So Clint, from a coaching perspective, what would you like to see in terms of players using both shoulders, being rehabbed after a shoulder injury, coming back? What would you like to see from a preventative point of view in medical professionals treating those players? Okay,
just first to answer your first question, what I really would emphasize with regards to coaches, and especially coaching the youngsters, you often pitch up at a rugby practice during the week and you'll see young rugby players just tackling tackle bags, running flat out, flying into the tackle bag. But that's unrealistic. That doesn't happen on a Saturday, and that type of approach leads to injury. So what I'd like to see coaches do is spend a bit of time with their players during the week, go through the basic points of a safe rugby tackle, and I'll leave that to Dr. Wayne Viljoen just to actually highlight those basic points of a safe rugby tackle. So I think we need to get to those soon so people know what we're talking about. But I'd like coaches to talk about the safe rugby tackle technique, focus on the components of that technique, and then let kids practice with the left and the right shoulder. It's got to become instinctive. Often what you see is that the kid is naturally a right-handed individual, so they want to make every tackle with their right shoulder, and that means when they have to make a tackle with the left shoulder, they then naturally want to go to the right shoulder, and they get their head in front of the player carrying the ball, and that is a big risk for injury. So that's number one. To answer your point number two, Dr. Viljoen, we see a lot of kids at the schoolboy level, when they come through our high performance camps, they have shoulder injuries. You talk to them about that injury, they've been playing with that injury for 3, 4, 5 weeks up to 2 months even, and you know, there's not enough emphasis on understanding what that problem is, and then once that problem is understood, then actually making sure that that shoulder is correctly looked after and following a good strength and rehab program. You need to get those shoulders correctly rehabbed after an injury. Otherwise, what tends to happen once, the player only favors the good shoulder, he doesn't use both shoulders, and he could once again put himself at risk when making a tackle. Wayne, I think it's a good point now, if you wouldn't mind just elaborating on the components of a safe tackle. I think that's very important. I think people have got to know what they should focus on.
No, thanks. Thank you, Clint. I think, you know, we've also got to be aware of those elements in the tackle. It's not going to be perfect in the match. The match situation is a dynamic situation. People change direction as a player. I mean, see, you've known, you're going with a good intention, but the guy steps you and you got it wrong. You know, players don't go out intentionally to go and hurt other players, and I think that is something we need to put on the table. The one thing about the game is you want to do it safely. If you're going to go out and tackle a guy properly and put him on his back, do it with at the least risk possible. And the guys, there's a lot of talk around making the game soft, and this is not making the game soft. We're just saying, you know, let's tackle safely and effectively. You can tackle a guy into the ground hard, that he will get up slowly and then wonder what the heck hit me, you know. But at the end of the day, if the neck and the head is taken out of the equation, then it was a safer tackle, as effective, as tough, as physical, as hard. But there's the risk of injury and concussions and head, neck and spine injuries removed. So one of the tips that we do put out is, and this is a common problem around rugby players in general, one of the biggest threats to rugby is head, neck and spine. So we first of all say is, don't end up on the deck, strengthen your neck. So if you're going to take a knock on the head and neck area, you've got to have good, strong, conditioned neck muscles. And one thing that we found in our data is that people don't do enough time on actual neck strengthening exercise. They'll build up the arms, they'll build up the legs, build up the back and the chest area, but they spend very, very little time on the neck itself. So what we're encouraging players to take more time throughout the year to spend on conditioning their neck, strengthening their neck muscles, making it stronger. So when you do get a knock, you've got more ability to stop that deceleration, acceleration, whiplash type of effect on the head and neck area. First of all, reduces concussions, and also if there's a potential serious head, neck, or spine injury, the chances of that happening are a lot less. There's new research out of New Zealand recently has shown quite nice data, where they showed that by a regular neck strengthening program, you can actually reduce the number and incidence of concussions in those guys who are involved. So that's a positive for me on this case. First of all, another thing is fitness in rugby. We don't spend enough time on fitness in rugby. I think from a referee's perspective, it's probably exactly the same. You've got to do a lot on the fitness of the players. If you've been training good technique, the research has also shown us that if you start getting tired, you start thinking less about good technique and just about getting the job done. And that's when the problems, I think, so you probably find the same as a player, is that the more tired you become, the less accurate you become in your execution of tackles and your body positioning and head positioning, etc. So that's something we really need to work on. Get guys fitter to last the game with better, safer, more effective technique. We also see guys running and bolting down at players a lot and then having to react. So we said, close down the space, approach the ball carrier at pace. But when you get there, you've got to slow down. So you've got to shorten your steps and then have the ability to react to where that player is going. So if you give them less space and options, you are more in control of that tackle situation and then can make a better decision with your head in the right position and tackle the player where they're going to. The big thing for us also is keep your head up, keep your face up and your eyes open. A lot of guys we see, and we've got some clips even on the BokSmart DVDs where we educate people on this, is they go like this and they drop the head into contact. Very, very bad body position. It exposes your neck to potential catastrophic injury, to potential any injury. And at the same time, you can't see what you're doing and you can't respond to the ball carrier running onto you. So for us, it's very important when you're going to contact, keep the head up, face up, and eyes open. What we also don't want to see is guys sitting down and waiting for the ball carrier to run onto them. Because you're not braced, you're not strong, and you're not in a good position to follow through and take the hit. So we say when you decide to go into that contact, you've got to confront the contact. Go in and get your body position on the right position, head and neck on the right side with the head up, face up. Don't put it in front, on the side or behind the player, and then drive through. 3 of the biggest protective mechanisms we found in the research, from a lot of Dr. Hendricks and Dr. Nick Berger's papers, you'll find some of that on our website under the research link, have shown that if you get the shoulder on to the ball carrier, you get your head and neck on the right side, and you get in a good strong body position to drive through the legs after the tackle, those three technique elements have been shown to be more protective of players from injuries. So I would basically go with those basic elements as some of the key examples of what we look at. But essentially, as a ball carrier, you don't want to go too high, be tackled too high, and as a tackler, you don't want to go from the hip and towards the knees, because that puts your head, neck, and spine potentially and your shoulder into a more compromising position. So from a science point of view, the sweet spot would be below the shoulder level and above the hip, in that nice soft spot for most people who don't play rugby. Those are kind of the elements that we try and promote from a safe tackling point of view. Clint?
Just one thing, I know Sia spoke about earlier that at training they, when the BokSmart are together or when the Stormers are together, they focus on a bit of contact training and tackle training. But Wayne, maybe you could just let the audience know what SA Rugby does regarding the schoolboy and non-elite level of the game to upskill coaches and referees on these techniques, so that kids are exposed to the right information and right tackle techniques.
Okay. Rasta, do you have anything to add from that side, from a referee's point of view, in terms of your experience watching how things happen?
Yeah, basically it's very important for us to do a bit of homework in terms of where the threats come from. We look at certain positions where players are exposed to a lot of contact. So we look at players like flankers and eighth men and centres, where they get most of the contact and they need to tackle the most. So our key focus areas are around those areas. And the public needs to understand that referees do not make the tackles themselves. They are there to manage the situations and deal with the situations accordingly. So it's very important for us to be very accurate in what we do. Even though we got a lot on our hands, we need to be as accurate as possible. So thanks, Dr. Wayne Viljoen, and it's good that you've explained the different types of tackle techniques, because those are key indicators for us what to watch, where to look for, and to look at the speed and force. I like the concept that Dr. Wayne Viljoen expressed in terms of slowing down when you get to a tackle. Already, we got a trigger to look at the player's intention, whether he slows down or whether he's going at speed, and then we can make the right judgments. So it's good that BokSmart is emphasizing tackle techniques so that we can execute our decision making when viewing these tackles.
So yeah, just to come back to you for one more point. So I know you're a busy man and you have to go to prepare for Saturday's match. As a player, from a concussion perspective, I think one of the questions that come through, I'm going to go to Clint after you, just to talk about what the first things you look for when a player is concussed. Sia, from your side as a player, what is your feeling around the tighter management around concussions on players, and removing players when they're showing any signs and symptoms of concussion, managing them properly, removing them out of the play and preparation contest to such a point that they might miss a match or two before they come back? What is your feeling as a player in terms of how this has been managed?
Yeah, I think it's been amazing, I think, to be quite honest. But obviously, as a player, you don't think that you just want to play rugby, you want to get on the field. But at the end of the day, in the bigger scale, I mean, you must still have life after rugby, and and if you get so many concussions, we've seen the movie Concussions, what happened to the guys after rugby, and it's really good for players because half of the time we don't even know we're concussed. But luckily we've got someone that's watching who can see that our behavior has changed, and they will take us in, and then you get checked up. And sometimes you go in there and you think you're fine, then you fail all those tests, you get below what you normally get. And it's really good because we just want to focus and get in the game, and you might get a knock, get concussed, and you get up, think you're fine, you may get another knock, that's not good for you. And it's not only for now, in the longer term for the lovers, we obviously have a life after rugby as well. You don't want to be sitting and suddenly you have these head injuries that you can't think properly, and you can't function, you can't be with your family because you haven't been looked after, So we do appreciate all this change of laws to look after us, and it does make rugby clean. It does make rugby good for us. It makes us want to give our best at all times, because we know there's people watching out for us and looking out for our well-being, not only as rugby players, as people as well, which is good.
Fantastic, thank you. And Clint, just to come to you quickly, one of the questions that came through over here was, what are the first signs that you look for to tell if a player is concussed?
Okay.
Just out of interest.
Basically, there are a number of signs, but what we'd look for is once the guy hits, is contact's been made, and just say he goes to ground, I'll note how quickly, what his reaction is on the ground. Does he lie motionless? Does he start convulsing? Does his body go into what we call tonic posturing? It's a bear hug position. You see the arms go up. So those are obvious signs. You know, if the player gets up, he might stumble, he might fall back down to the ground. Those are very obvious signs that the player may be suffering from a concussion. If you get to the player and you speak to him, he may complain of bang to the head, and he feels he's got a headache, he feels a bit dizzy. He might even talk about feeling nauseous, or his vision's a bit blurred. Those are very classic signs that or symptoms that the player may have taken a bang to the head and is now suffering from a concussion, or at least you must suspect a concussion.
Okay. No, thanks very much, Flint. Just 2 more questions briefly before I'm going to wrap up, so I know everybody's busy and has to go on. Rasta, from your side, in your opinion, has there been an increase in the cards since the new tackle laws and have been implemented? Can you respond to that?
If we look at the application at the moment, we've seen a higher frequency in terms of penalty count against high tackles, firstly, and then we've seen an increase in yellow cards for dangerous tackles in neck rolls, which is great for the game at the moment. So the numbers will start decreasing the more we keep applying the law.
Fantastic, thanks, Rasta. Another question coming your way, as you're a popular man at the moment. What is your take on the spear tackle? Now, from our side, obviously, that can lead to severe injury and catastrophic injury as a nature. So we've got no tolerance of it from a safety point of view. What is your take on it?
So if we look at the spear tackle, it's an illegal tackle. And players should not be executing this tackle on the field because it includes force and speed. There is a greater intention to hurt a player when you spear him. So we are cutting this tackle out the game, and players should not be exercising this tackle to put a defender under pressure.
Fantastic, thank you. Just to wrap up, a couple of things from my side. The BokSmart program is a very specific program targeting referees and coaches. And now every 2 years, every coach and referee in South African structures have to undergo the rugby safety course to make sure that they understand what the latest research evidence is telling us in terms of rugby safety, injury prevention, those areas of the game which are creating the most injuries, the mechanisms of injury that lead to the most catastrophic injuries, concussions, etc. And then we provide guidance to all the coaches and referees around the country. And it's about 32,000 of people going through courses in a 2-year period through South Africa. And then we educate them on what's happening in the game, and we also help them make the proactive decisions to try and address that within their coaching, within the referee systems and structures. If you want to find out more about the BokSmart program, please go to www.boksmart.com. You can also engage on us on social media if you would like more information, but the website is full of lots of information, freely available, research papers on what evidence we've been using to guide our decisions and the processes and policies. And also, you can also find some of our older materials in video format on the link and also on our YouTube channel, BokSmart SA. I just would like to thank the panel members of here, Rasta, Klins, and Sia for taking their time. And also thanking all of you on the other side of the screen for participating in our session. Thank you for your time and contributions, and let's all work together, educate each other about what the expectations are around safer, smarter rugby. Thank you very much.
Is that one, okay?
So, that's